Hi, fans of high quality entertainment. Yeah, I was thinking today about, when I was younger, of course, the first band that I became a big fan of was the Beatles. Seeing them on the Ed Sullivan Show. I might have, I don't remember because, it was a long time ago, but I might have already been a fan because I'm sure my oldest sister was buying Beatles records because I have a memory of Beatle 45s, for I think Twist and Shout and There's a Place I think I remember seeing on a single. And I'm pretty sure she bought Meet the Beatles. So I I, I think, I don't know, but I became a fan of the Beatles for sure in February of 1964, but it might have been just, a few weeks earlier than their appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show. And so they're, as most of you know, they're my number one band of all time. That's never going to change. uh, it's just the Beatles and then every other band under them. And so the next band I'm pretty sure I became a fan of is coming up. The Monkees. Yeah. They were I remember getting the Monkees' first album for my birthday. So would that be 65 or 66? I should have Googled it. But they were definitely uh they never surpassed the Beatles. But there was a time I was thinking, geez, I think I like this Monkees band as much as the Beatles. Uh, and it didn't last. I've always loved the Monkees music, but probably a couple of years later I did lose a little bit of interest in them. But I've always loved their music, and that's never going to change. So putting these 12 bands together, it's, like I said, you should have been writing things down back then because it was over 50 years ago. Uh, and so I'm kind of guessing which bands I became a fan of in order. So I believe after the Monkees, the next band I became a big fan of was Creedence Clearwater Revival. I remember getting Bio Country. I think it was at Christmas time, so it might have already been out a few months. And I've obviously heard, some of their music on the radio, Proud Mary and all that. And yeah, I became a fan right away. I've been a fan ever since. When the Beatles broke up, I think CCR kind of were the Beatles for me for a short while until they broke up. Around the time of Cosmo's Factory, I was a huge fan of theirs. And like I said, I have all of their albums on CD and love their music. And there are some bands I'm not mentioning, like the Rolling Stones and the Who. I love them, but I never bought their albums growing up. Like my older brothers would buy those albums, like the Who Live at Leeds and Tommy. So I never had the same connection as I did with something that I would buy with my own money or, just vinyl records that were given to me. So yeah, CCR. And then after CCR, yeah, like I said, the timing might be a little off for some of these bands, but Led Zeppelin, I think the first album of theirs I heard I think one of my older brothers bought it was Led Zeppelin 2, but I ended up having some Led Zeppelin albums too. So, like I said, there was a bigger connection for me than like the Rolling Stones, even though I loved the Rolling Stones. And yeah, and my especially my second oldest brother was a huge fan of Led Zeppelin too. And then a Canadian band, yeah. I remember buying or being given the Guess Who's, no, I think American Woman first. One of my older brothers bought it. And then I don't think I bought it. I didn't have any money, but it must have been like a birthday present or something. I had my very own vinyl record of the Guess Who's Share the Land. And that's around the time I realized they're from Canada. And I was seriously so proud because, most of these bands I loved were British or American. And so it really impressed me that a band that I really loved was Canadian. And and later on, my oldest sister Sharon would tell me that, because Burton Cummings was from Winnipeg, Manitoba, and I used to live in Winnipeg. She used to see Burton Cummings in his previous band, the Deverons, I believe, and he used to play at, like their high school dances and stuff. So she remembers Burton Cummings, before he was in the Guess Who. So yeah, I love the Guess Who. Great band, very underrated band. And then after the Guess Who, or around the same time, Grand Funk Railroad. And there used to be this, not really a friend, but just an acquaintance that I knew, and he was just a really nice guy, Terry Lloyd. He's a Facebook friend. Hi, Terry. And he used to let me borrow his vinyl records. And so one time I remember borrowing, I don't know which one, I think it was Grand Funk's live album or the Red album. And oh boy, I became a fan. And so soon after that, I was a paper boy, so I was actually making some money. And I bought my very own Grand Funk Live album. I think that was the first one I bought, and I've been a fan ever since. And as some of you know, I had the pleasure of interviewing Mark Farner on my channel a few months back. And then after Grand Funk, I believe, Humble Pie. Yeah. I think once again, it's my brothers. They would kind of start it. I think my oldest brother Bob bought Rockin' the Fillmore, the live album, and it was awesome. And I ended up buying Humble Pie's Smokin' with my own money. And then later on, I bought Rock On and then their earlier albums. And then, like some bands, their later releases, Eat It I never bought, but my older brother did. He was a fan too. And then I bought Thunderbots, which was just okay. And then, I just lost interest in them. But I have their box set of all of their early albums, and just a great band with Peter Frampton, of course, in the early years. And then after Humble Pie came Uriah Heep. Yeah. And I definitely bought the albums. My brothers weren't into Uriah Heep. It was probably one of the first bands. No, I guess Grand Funk, my older brothers weren't really into. Uh, but Uriah Heep, the first album I bought was The Magician's Birthday, I believe 1972. And then I bought Demons and Wizards, the previous album, and I love that. I never bought Uriah Heep Live, the double album. I always wanted it, but I just never got around to buying it. And then once again, I lost interest in them with, Return to Fantasy was okay, and Wonder World, and High and Mighty. And then I just stopped buying their albums. But it's cool that, Mick Box, the lead guitarist, is still in the band, and they're still making some pretty good albums. I just never followed their career. But Demons and Wizards, and their earlier albums too, I've heard from the Glenn Kellaway CD exchanges. I'd like to get them sometime. And there's Mick Box, rocking away. So after Uriah Heep, yeah, this is one band, Black Oak, Arkansas. Like when I say I was a fan of these bands, I was a huge fan, like almost obsessed. And the first album of theirs I had was High on the Hog. And then I bought their live album Raunch and Roll. And then once again, the next release was Street Party, which was disappointing. And X-Rated, one of the later releases, was kind of back to being really good. And then I stopped buying their albums soon after that. But yeah, I would love to get High on the Hog. Some of their early albums are kind of expensive to buy. They're like $100 or more. If somebody wants to send me Black Oak, Arkansas's High on the Hog on CD, thank you. I'm not paying $100 for a CD. But yeah. And of course, David Lee Roth kind of was influenced by Jim Dandy, the lead singer. And then after Black Oak, Arkansas, yes, believe it or not, I was a fan of Kiss. Their first album, when did that come out? 1974? And yeah, I bought the first album. I never heard the music. I just maybe saw them in like Cream magazine. And so I was very interested. And one day the new album was out. I bought it and I was not disappointed. I loved it. I was a fan. And then Hotter Than Hell came out, and that was disappointing. The production, I think it was mainly the production, though. It was not very good. Then Dressed to Kill was much better, and I loved Kiss Alive, their first live album. And then after that, once again, I just kind of gave up on them. And so I do have their first album, but that's about all I want. But like I said, I was a fan back in the day. And they were a pretty good live band, in the early years. And then after Kiss, yes, I think I've talked about this band a couple of times. Sparks, 1974. I saw them at all of these American shows. This one is, I think, Don Kirshner's rock concert. But it was all around the same time in 1974. But the first time I saw them was on the Midnight Special, and I became a fan, and I'm still a fan. They've never really disappointed. And a couple of albums weren't quite as good as other ones, but overall, I've really loved all of their albums. And then the last one is Blue Oyster Cult. Yeah. I'd always heard about, I'd read in the magazines about this guitarist, Donald Buck Dharma Rozier, being such a great guitarist. And I bought Secret Treaties, 1975, I believe. And at first, I think I was a bit disappointed in it, but, it took a 3 or 4 listens, and then I ended up loving it. Then I bought their first 2 albums, Tyranny and Mutation, I loved, and their debut, Blue Oyster Cult, which I didn't like at first, but it's might be one of my favorite Blue Oyster Cult albums. And uh, I base it, yeah, I have everything by Blue Oyster Cult, and so I am definitely a big fan of Blue Oyster Cult, one of my favorite American bands. So that's it. My first, or close to my first 12 bands that I loved. I also loved The Doors and other bands like that. But like I said, my brothers would buy those artist albums, so I didn't feel as big of a connection to them. So I would love your thoughts in the comment section below. What are some of the first bands that you became a fan of? I know some of you are uh, probably in your teen years or early 20s, so you're just kind of starting out. But yeah, it's fun to look back at some of these great bands. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.